Okay. Hello. I'm going to be talking about the application framework library, AppCmd. This is really just, it really is just an introduction. I didn't have time to get into a lot of depth. I tried to do some very strange things with it over the past couple of years. You know, kind of points where the documentation ends and you think, well, what if I do, how am I going to do this? And you just jump off kind of into crazy land. I didn't get into that. This is just a kind of a quick intro. A lot of it stolen from the tutorial, but maybe prettied up a little bit. Probably everyone here has had experience with something like subversion, get, or CVS, and basically where there's a script and the script options, and then the command options, and command arguments. So like get log, or svn add, or cvs add. The point of this framework is to make applications like this easier to write than just writing a bunch of scripts or a big blob of code and having to figure out how to parse options like this and get everything in the right place. Another common feature with something like get or CVS or SVN or any kind of complex application that has subcommands or commands is usually there's some way to print out, okay, tell me all the commands that I can possibly run with you. And I'll come back to that in a little bit. Like I said, this is to, it was originally written to make complex applications easier to write and also easier to test, so that there'd be a natural way to break apart pieces so that you can just test pieces individually and not try and figure out how am I going to test this big glob of a script. The reason I started using it is I just had an idea to rip some of my CDs to an MP3 collection, and so I wrote a couple scripts, and the more I wrote, the more I started seeing all of the duplication, especially with the option handling. So I started, you know, I was going to write something on my own, but then I thought, why should I do that when there's CPAN? So I looked into CPAN, and I originally started looking at get opt chain, you know, because I wanted option parsing. And it basically does the option parsing like get and subversion does. But the more I used it, the more I realized that my script, my main script, it was shrinking down to almost nothing, and it was just doing option handling, and then it was pushing out all the other logic to kind of application classes for each particular command. And then I stumbled on AppCmd, which basically does exactly that, except the guy who wrote it thought it out well enough that it was using that seemed a lot simpler than using get opt chain and everything I was doing. So we're just going to go right into it, and the script is actually just 2 lines long. And you'll have an application class, which is 3 lines long, at the bare minimum. And basically all the script does is run the application class. And there's the magic is really in the AppCmd setup. It basically starts up the framework and gets all the options parsing and can find all the other bits and pieces that you need. So if you only write those 2 files, and you execute your script with commands, it gives you two commands that I'm going to refer to these as commands, and it gives you two freebie commands. The first is commands, and that basically just lists, okay, what do you know about? What can I run? And describe what does this command do? And then help, that's also a freebie. And you can also, this is how the help functions is help and then the command, and it will tell you more information about the command. And they're all, you'll see later how you can set up your own commands and do the same thing with to get the same kind of output. So to create commands that are yours, you just put them in a special place. Remember the application name was example in example.pm. So where it looks for commands by default, and of course you can change this, is under the command. So example command and then initialize. And initialize is actually going to be your command name, exactly like this. And the bare bones is not 3 lines, as you can tell from this. So it knows what to expect. It sees that, okay, I understand that it's a command, and I understand that you're trying to run it, but I don't actually have any meat to run. I don't know what you want me to do. So the bare bones execute to actually get your code to do whatever you want is the execute method. And it hands you the options that were handed to that command. So if, say, for instance, you're doing CVS diff, with diff you can say, okay, this version to this version. And those options refer to the diff command. Well, these options refer to this initialize command. And then arguments, which would be, if it was a replica of CVS diff, then you would have one or more files, and those would be your arguments. So you run that, you implement the execute method in the initialize command and run it, and then it just prints out. It does whatever you told it to do.
Quick
Yes.
question. Is it case sensitive as far as the .pm file name versus the actual command name?
It will squash your, you can initialize this like you normally would, and it will squash it to lowercase.
Okay.
So you can do that. I don't know how it would handle conflicting cases. Say if you had initialize with lowercase and initialize with uppercase. Probably poorly.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can, if you don't want to do it this way, you can capitalize it how you like. And also, feel free to interrupt, because I'm just going to go through this, and if you don't interrupt me, I'm just going to keep going. So to specify options for commands, you implement the oppspec method, which just returns a list that looks like this. Now these are slurped up and processed by getopt long descriptive. These are pretty powerful. You can see here that there's a long name and then a pipe and then just a single letter, a single character, and that's the short name. the description is the second field, and then there's a third field, a hash that you can have, and you can list defaults.
And these are params for a name or for a command?
These are, yes, option. This is
Options
specifying
for a
options for the command initialize, right?
One's a flag and one's a value.
Right, and this one,
value.
yeah, this is a value. It has a it has an argument that's a string array.
Got it.
So the default you can see it's 0, 1, and 3 is a little cut off, but and there are other things you can do with this, including you can have hidden options that don't actually show up but still respond. You can do things like enumerations. Get up long descriptive is fairly powerful, and so you can really squeeze a lot of logic in here too if you want. This will also feature in just like a command can have options, there can be global options, and these are specified in a very similar manner, just in a different place. But it's the same syntax here. Basically, you handed a list of options that this knows about. Another method in commands that is sometimes useful is validate args. This basically before the execute is called, it calls the framework itself calls validate args. So this is your spot to decide, okay, do my args actually make sense? So in this example, you need at least one arg, otherwise it's going to blow up. And basically, your only chance to escape is to blow up. Typically with something like usage error, but you could throw some other kind of exception. But there's no return value. So if you have to stop, you have to have an exception out. And here, like in the past, I've used for my CD project, my CD ripping project, I'll do stuff like, well, is it a CDDB ID, which is just an 8-character hex string? If it doesn't look like that, then I don't know what you're talking about, and then I'll blow up and exit out. And that is entirely optional. I mean, that's, if you need it, use it. If you don't, then you don't need it. Really, in any command, execute is what you need. So I usually like to use dumper when I'm exploring a framework, just to see, okay, well, what is this? What does opt look like? What is it actually? It's actually that. I don't know, maybe I put these in the wrong order. Oh, no, I see what I did. So I'm going to be dumping the options, and then this is actually what I am calling. So I'm going to initialize, and then I hand it just a flag, an option. But if you remember, there was I needed at least one argument, and I didn't supply any. So it knows that, too few arguments, that's exactly the error message that I told it to kick out, and then it prints the usage. So you can see that it does a very nice job of formatting the usage, and all you have to do is put it into that op spec and say, oh, well, this values and the short values, the short designators of V, and this is R. It'll just spit it out real pretty. if I make the same call, but I handed an argument, because it's not an option, so it figures, okay, it must be the argument to initialize, then it works, spits out this little string, and then it just dumps the ops. And this is just a really simple hash of the long name and then the value. And if it realizes it's an array, it gives you an array of the values. So that's really easy to digest. You can figure out what options your command has been called without too much effort. The abstract. This is basically when you print out the commands, and so help, display a command's help screen. That is the abstract of the help command. When you write your own, you have to supply the abstract method and it'll spit out, initialize, well, whatever string you tell it to. It can also pull this from the pod documentation, which is clever. It looks here first and then looks in the pod documentation, and then if it can't find it, it's just blank. So I thought that was clever. If you pod everything, then that's kind of a freebie. Going back to the option specs, if you want to have options for your overall script, then inside the application class, you create the global op spec subroutine and return a list of get opt long descriptive values. So same as before, the long, short, and then this is the description of the option. And so when you print commands, now you see that it has command options, and you didn't have to do anything else. So how do you get those? Inside a command, inside your execute, all of the methods inside the command, they're class methods. They are instance methods. So it gives you the command that is being executed as the first argument. So anywhere inside that, you can call self, and then you can call app. So it knows which application it's part of. In this case, any of the commands that we have, this app would be the example.pm at the top of the hierarchy. So if you want to put, but by default, it has global options. And they look, if you dump them, they look exactly like the command options. It's just a basic hash. It's blessed, but it's a basic hash. You don't have to monkey around with a bunch of stuff to get to it. Another thing that is also very helpful, because you have the application you can grab the application from every place in the command. If you need to do anything at a global level, you can put that logic into the application class. So things like config files or config file loading or handling, that can go in there. Logging initialization. There are also other methods to get other commands. That's a little tricky. I didn't have time to document that, but it is possible. So you just have to you have to understand, you have to trick it, basically. It's not a nice way to do it, but you can trick it into giving you another command, which I've done before because I like to separate out the logic.
What do you mean? What's an example?
Okay, I had for my CD ripping project, I had one command, and so instead of initialize, I had something called rip. So basically that would have all the logic contained to to rip a CD to kind of like a core file format.
Okay. So you do like script.pl space rip? Is that the example? Oh, that's the command?
Yes.
Okay.
But there were times when I needed to look up information from a naming server. It's like, okay, which music CD do you think you are? You know, what do you think your title is? What do you think your artist is? But that was in a completely different command. So I would have to walk up into the application and tell it to, okay, go give me this command. And then I could basically kind of force it to run. I could just force it to run and ask it, okay, well you figure out what title, what artist this is, and what title of the CD is, and how many tracks are actually on it. And then I would take that, and then I would continue on ripping with that logic. Normally the command would be used in like a script, and then like info, and I'd give it a disk name, and it would just tell me, okay, well, with this ID, what disk is that? What artist is it? What's the title of this? So you can get to basically any of your other commands and logic through the application.
How does it handle the nested commands?
Nested?
Subcommands. So
Okay.
like if you're using Git, you know, you've got you know, maybe log, I think you have log up there, and additional follow.
That's
So-
a param to log, right?
Right. So that'll be like a
Arg. So the options.
kind of a.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so if you had something to modify follow, like
Okay.
like maybe
No, you like say follow takes a
Right.
string, and it's like
or
required.
or, yeah, or
Yeah.
like uppercase or lowercase or
Okay,
this
um,
or that. I don't know. I mean,
What?
I've just seen like strings of commands. Before,
Yes.
So.
What it does, it handles it fairly well, but what it does is it slurps up everything on the command line, and then it sorts through all of the global options that you've told it about, and then it pulls those off. And if it knows that they have an argument, then it'll correctly find those too. So then after that, then it looks to see, okay, what thing does it think is the command?
Right.
And usually it's really good about that too. And then basically you're only left with options, and if it has an argument, it'll detect that too. So it basically goes through a second phase,
Right.
exactly like the first, of finding the options, and then any arguments to those options. And then after that, everything that's left has to be an argument for the option, for the command.
Right, like so for find, for instance, if you're using find on the command line, and it has like all the depth and print and
Yeah.
blah 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 blah
Yeah.
argument. So and then also RPM, you know,
Mm.
has like the list of
Yeah.
you know. So all it does is put them in a string, and then you got to deal with it, or.
No, it parses it out.
But then, how do you identify the? So, like, let's say that you use, I don't know, IVR or something like that, or
Okay.
tar.
Okay, so how does it, once it's parsed everything,
Right.
how do you know what the values are
Right.
for your options?
Right.
and-
That's kind of what I'm
Okay,
asking. Yeah.
okay.
Well, I guess it depends on if they're strings versus. Or if
Well,
they're
no.
flags
So like,
versus-
so like on RPM is like minus IVR, right?
But those are all just flags. Those are 3 different options that are flags.
Correct. But that would all be in one option thing on the column list there, right?
It should split it out. They're individual flags, it's 3 flags.
Right.
I just grouped them together.
So yeah, and yeah, you can group the, like, you can,
So just
Group
put them
all
in a
of the
different
short.
part of the array there.
so, yeah, I mean, you can sort this out however you want, but, so for instance, this skip refs, you can either specify skip refs, or you can specify capital R.
Right.
And because there's not an equal sign, it knows, okay, this option doesn't take an argument. It doesn't get past the value. It's just the fact that it's present is it means it's either true or false, basically.
Right.
And you can specify either one, and that's fine. The values has an equal s, so it expects a string, and it actually expects a list of strings. I should have made an example for that, but so it very well expect, if you specify v or values,
Right.
and you don't specify any value, it's going to squawk.
Okay. So you just loop through the array list there, basically.
Well, this is when you're setting it up.
Right.
You're just telling the framework, okay, these are the options I'm going to accept, and this one has I expect an argument from it.
Right.
And then once you're actually inside the execute, they come across in the opt. So you get
Okay.
the command itself,
Right.
and then you get the options, which is, for all intents and purposes, going to be a hash
Right.
ref. And then you get the args, which is an array ref, which is
Right.
just it'd be like a list of file names
Right.
or something. And what the opt hash looks like is this. Now, skip refs we get because we specified the -r.
Right.
So that's true. The values, there was a default for the options.
Right.
So you get the array inside the values. So basically all you have to do is, if you want to see, you just check this hash, this opt hash, and hey, did skip refs, is that flag on?
Right.
If yes, then you can go do whatever you need to do, or set up whatever logic you need for
Right,
that.
but you'd have to know beforehand, like, all the possible values.
Well, yes, but
Okay.
remember that this is in the same class as this. So
No,
there-
yeah, I understand.
yeah,
I
but
just,
yeah, no, you
well,
you
let's
have
say
to
you're
know.
doing a foreign command, right? So you'd have to list it all out and then put it in the logic there, right? The logic
Oh,
piece.
yeah, no, if you wanted to say, for some reason, say like wrap some other
Other
command,
yeah.
and if it had a lot of options and things like that,
Right.
then yes, you're going to
You'd
be
have to list
occupied
them
for a
all.
while
Yeah,
filling all that
gotcha.
out.
Okay. So it doesn't have like a way to just kind of iterate through those, back to Doug's thing. Like
yeah.
an automatic, maybe you could build one obviously, but it doesn't have.
Yeah, I mean, if probably I would suggest that if you wanted to wrap that, then probably this would probably not be your best tool to use. This is good for when you want to write something like that, like Git or SVN.
Right, right.
But if you want to wrap it, then no, I would probably just go back to just a very kind of standard script.
Just a Perl.
And yeah, now if you want to like parse the options and then modify them and then spit them back out
Yeah,
again.
that's kind of what I was thinking that you were going to get to here.
I don't know how you do that. I don't know what the best way to
Oh,
do that would be.
Alright.
Maybe it would be I would probably try and co-opt some of this logic. Probably just like look
Yeah.
inside, steal it, and
Yeah.
then make your own little library
So,
for it.
but on your CD Ripper, did you build that from scratch, or did you
In
co-opt some of the other commands that exist already?
no Not really. Basically, how it evolved was I had a bunch of scripts,
Right.
and then I realized, well, I'm doing this option parsing over and over and over again, and there's a lot of repeat. So how can I stop doing that? So then I tried to consolidate it a little bit, and then I found get opt chain,
Right.
which kind of does that,
Right.
but basically all it does is the option parsing. And then it says, okay, well, I have this command thing, and then you supply a little subroutine, and then it goes and does that. So that little thing, I would just point it out to another class, more my logic that was just...
So you had a different application already that existed?
Basically, I mean, I bolted the front end of that
Gotcha.
onto this, and then once I switched to AppCmd, then that was actually kind of all I was doing already. I had some option parsing, some option specification, and then classes where I would do other things where I actually carry out the logic.
Right.
So I was kind of already doing that, and it worked better than what I was doing before.
Right.
So I switched to that. So
That's
I switched
cool.
to this.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Um,
I just was curious on that because I thought what you were trying to do with that, the CD River piece was try to go and co-opt a command. So that's why I was like asking the question in the first place.
No, yeah. To do something like that, I don't know what you're going to do. I suspect that actually there'll probably be a lot of regexes if you want to like
Yeah,
take
well,
something
that's what I
and
was
tweak the
figuring,
options
yeah.
and then spit it back out to another command, slightly modified.
Well, and then you put logic and stuff in there and like AI on when to pick what.
Yeah, that's some of the other things that this framework does well is you can do things like you can abbreviate commands. So just like CDS add
Right.
Or commit.
or commit, right, CO. It's like, oh, there's nothing else that starts with CO. It knows what it is. So it just does it. Same thing with this. Basically, getting off the ground very short, in a fairly quick manner is relatively easy if you know you're already going to have something that with multiple commands, like get or subversion. If you know that this is where you're headed,
Right.
this is a good thing. This will probably save you effort. And there are some other things that you can do with this. Like I don't know if anybody uses get, but get has some commands that are like basically it's nested. So you can instead of just it's like get svn, and then there's a whole bunch of svn specific commands that follow after that. So you can have this chain of get svn checkout and have this huge list of of 3 different levels of logic that it's processing. You can do the same thing with AppCmd, although that's a lot more undocumented. Yeah, he apparently got tired of at that point. The rest of his documentation is actually really good.
Pretty good.
Cool. But the kind of the edge cases are sparse, and you kind of have to just try something out and see if that
So
works.
it works.
And see where does it blow up.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Let's see.
Hey, on the options that you don't define a default for, if you don't
Yes.
specify it on the command line, will it still appear in your option hash?
No,
Or
it will not appear. It's
so first you need to test if it exists, then you can check for a value?
You could, yeah. But I mean, usually what I'll usually do is if I know that it's going to be like a boolean, like verbose. I mean, it's either verbose or it's not even. It doesn't exist. So I'll just check, the opt verbose if it's true. If it's not there, it's not even true. So with other kinds of data, that might be not so great. And if whether it being there or not there might be different than if it's true or not true, then that would work. But usually I just, with flags like that, I'll just check, okay, is verbose true? And if it's not there, then it's still not true. So you can just keep on going. That's actually about the end. This is just a link. I have this on GitHub and here, my website, which I'll send out a link if you want. But this has a tutorial, and this is another little tutorial the author did in 2009. So it was actually about 3 years ago. And then I just had, this is what I used to build this. And this is where the GitHub is for this whole which is the presentation, which it's not up to date right now. But, any more questions?
Yeah, pop in a CD.
Yeah, I really wanted to use the code, but I've done 4 rewrites in 2 years, and it's a tar pit. And, I mean, so that would probably not help anybody figure out what are you doing, and I don't want to do this. So I decided I should just go more with the simple examples. Anything else? Or comments?
That's good.
Thank you.